Hey everybody, and welcome back to the next episode of the Sweaty Palms podcast. I'm your host, Zoe Dillon, and today we have two very special guests on the show, Velena Vego and Jonny Rosas. If you listen to my other episodes, you know that I'm an intern for Velena at the 40 Watt. Velena is the Vice President of Third-Party Programming for Live Nation and the talent buyer for both the 40 Watt Club here in Athens and the Buckhead Theater in Atlanta. And Jonny is the National Manager of third-party programming at Live Nation. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for coming on the podcast and being here. I'm really honored to have both you guys, and I'm really excited to see where this episode takes us. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
Just wanted you guys to see the scene of what's going on right now because I don't film yet, but Gypsy is currently sitting in Jonny's lap with a blanket over her, and it's really cute.
She's laying right on top of me.
And Gypsy is Velena and David's dog.
And she's about 80 pounds, so she's not a small girl.
Yeah. No, not at all.
She's a big lady.
So I'd love to ask you, Jonny, if you could give a little bit of background on why you decided to work in the music industry and kind of your progression through it from where you started to where you are now. I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday in the car, but for anybody else who wasn't in that car, it would be nice to talk about. And then after that, I'd love to talk about how y'all met too and the story of that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
My intro to music was with my cousins showing me music when I was much younger, and then learning guitar. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that for about, I think it's like 14, 15 years now. After that, I kind of knew I wanted to be in the music industry, or I knew I wanted to be in the music industry. I just didn't know at what capacity. Mm-hmm. Going to college, I decided to join the music industry studies program. Did that, and I think in my sophomore year, I did my internship with Live Nation. I was about 20 years old at that time. I was in the main Live Nation headquarters. I was off Hollywood and Highland in LA. And so I was on the floor with a lot of the big talent buyers, a lot of the presidents, oversaw the venues, a lot of big name people in the industry or in Live Nation. I was the intern for one of the talent buyers there. Being an intern, I was just editing contracts, getting data, just like daily task stuff. I actually really enjoyed listening to people talk about booking shows and what it took and, all the hard work that went into it. After doing that, I kind of knew I wanted to book shows. So to keep inside the industry, I worked at House of Blues Anaheim, which was still under Live Nation's umbrella at that time. I was at House of Blues Anaheim. I was a box office ticket seller, and I also worked at the House of Blues restaurant. So I was a ticket seller there for about 3.5 years. Live Nation closed down House of Blues Anaheim to move it from the downtown Disney location into a different location. Once it closed down for about 6 months, I want to say, I took a job at Segerstrom Center for the Arts, which is this nonprofit theater out in Orange County. It was not the same thing. The music industry is much different than a nonprofit running, quote unquote, a venue. It's very, very different. Being there, doing a lot of Broadway, a lot of classical music, it's a very much different clientele than a rock concert. It was just a totally different vibe. So got out of there. I applied for the Fox Theater in Riverside. Didn't hear anything back for about 2 months. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to get this job. But luckily, when I was in the middle of going to EDC, which is this huge EDM festival in Las Vegas, I get a call from some random number in Riverside. And so I don't usually answer numbers I don't know. For whatever reason, I answered it, and it was the assistant general manager of the Fox Theater. We did a small interview. I was getting ready to go to this festival. And he was like, okay, I want to do a second interview. Come to the Fox like in a week. Funny enough, this assistant general manager is now the general manager of the Aztec in San Antonio. So we still talk, and I still work with him. But anyways, got the job there as just a ticket seller again. But the general manager and I started talking when I was there. He was also a Cal Poly alumni. And so we're talking about what I wanted to do, my college experience. At a point, he lost his executive assistant. And so he told me he wanted to hire me. Our interview was us going down to what's called the Festival of Lights. It's during December in Riverside. It's this gigantic festival with Christmas lights everywhere, all sorts of desserts. So our interview was walking around the Festival of Lights. He bought me a churro. He told me what the job was. And he was like, great, you have the job.
Oh, wow.
And so, to be honest, I haven't interviewed for a job in years, which is a beautiful thing. But he handed me this job. And going from just selling tickets to working with venue managers, that was a huge jump. I knew how to sell tickets, but I didn't know how to talk the talk, with different managers and their daily tasks and understand what they do. The learning curve was gigantic. I didn't understand anything. It was really hard for almost 3 years. I was getting reamed about a lot of things I didn't understand. when you're jumping into it and people need help, they're wanting help with people that understand how to do the job. And I was not that. It took a long time. 2 to 3 years is a long time to learn everything, but it was a lot. I had to learn production and marketing and booking and the daily tasks of the general manager. And it was a city-owned venue, so there's city politics involved. Did that for 3 years, became the general manager assistant after our general manager left. But then there was a lot of reliance on me when we didn't have a general manager. And so I was doing stuff that the general manager used to do. I was helping on the marketing side. I was creating events. I was doing Creative Content Filler before it was a division in Live Nation. So we were creating events, doing little like DJ parties. I was doing what we call co-pros. I was doing co-promoted shows with different promoters, radio stations. And then I was doing the rentals, renting out the venue to different promoters. We would talk about their marketing plan, the artists, what we thought their ticket sales would look like. And that's how I kind of got into the rental game. Renting out venues and, tasks that come with that. It sounds easy to just rent out a venue, charge somebody, and let them have the venue, but it's not that simple, which I think a lot of people don't understand. So that's how I got into kind of booking shows. Go back from, my internship of wanting to book shows to now doing it. It was smaller than like the national tours that Live Nation does, but it's still in the same realm. So I was dealing with agents, doing contracts, tracking ticketing, going over marketing plans with the marketers. And that's how I kind of got my feet wet with booking. And I did that right when I started as the executive assistant, I think like 3 months in. The general manager gave me a little bit of leash, but he was always overseeing. But once that general manager left after 3 years, it was all me.
Oh, wow.
And so then I just got drenched in it. And so I was responsible for a lot. I had a budget. I was doing creative content. I was filling in dates when the talent buyers weren't doing it because they were just so overwhelmed. Then I kind of got used to talking the talk with the marketing team and kind of learned a lot more about the business. And talking to our own talent buyers too was really helpful and expanding my knowledge on what they do on their end. Because of course I was doing the small stuff, but they're dealing with the big agents. That kind of helped me too, learning their end, the marketing end, and all the different departments. I wanted to just do booking, but getting my feet wet with everything else gave me a much larger amount of knowledge. And so now I can talk to each venue at this point and speak the same language, understand what they're saying, which I think is really important. When I got the job that I have now, which I guess I could jump into the story of how Velena and I met, Velena got her job as being the VP of third-party programming in September 2021. She was doing stuff nationally already, and I took care of the Riverside market for rentals or for third-party programming. I wanted to reach out, but my general manager at the time said, just wait, we'll talk to her later once she's more settled in. October, she had something for Riverside. My general manager, was kind of protective of me and our business in Riverside. He, in an email chain, was just like, hey, Jonny takes care of third-party programming out here. Just to let everybody know, just send everything for Riverside his way. Velena sent an email back and just said, hey, Jonny, we should talk. Why don't you give me a call? I think we talked for probably about 45 minutes. And she was like, I want to hire you. I'm going to call you back. And was like, great, you're going to get this job. Just keep doing what you're doing. Let's talk more. And it just happened really quick. I think we started in October, started doing it nationally and helping her by November, and then had my offer letter by December. It sounds like a long time, but I was doing the job right from the get-go. Now doing it nationally and working with Velena in like 130 venues. It's a lot of volume for sure, but it's not too different from what I was doing. It's just a lot of different states and people and learning people's names and the different politics in each state and what's allowed and what's not. It's been fun. It's a good experience. Just learning everything, and I'm still learning along the way. And I think in this industry, that's what you have to do. You just have to learn as many different things as you possibly can to make you a well-rounded manager and leader in the company. So essentially, that's how I got my start. It definitely was not easy. I can definitely say it was not fun in the beginning because I was learning and, I was getting in trouble, but I was learning. I was in a market where I could learn. I wasn't in LA where it's just high volume all the time. And I feel like in some of those venues, it might be a little bit more cutthroat than in Riverside. But my general manager was a very good mentor. He taught me a lot. The new general manager saw that I was really trying. And so he told me from the very get-go, you can mess up as many times as you want and you will get it. But I want you to grow here. And that at some point, you can get to a point where you are a manager. And so he gave me a lot of leash and allowed me to do a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do in a different venue. That's how I got my start. I definitely will say it took a long time. I did not become a manager for 8-9 years. So it was not quick. But it was definitely worth the time of just waiting it out and trying until I got to that point. Just perseverance for sure. So that's my long story of how I got to where I'm at now.
I was just going to say about Jonny, it's just kind of kismet when his general manager did say, we have someone that does ticketed rentals. And I did exactly say, well, I would love to talk to him because I was very new to this. And even though my boss told me that I could hire when I was hired at Live Nation to do this new division, I did say I absolutely have to have somebody to work with me because I'm a good seller. I'm a good people person, but I'm not very good at the admin stuff, which I didn't even realize how great Jonny was and how he's taught Rome and taught these things. So to him, it's like second nature. And the beautiful thing about Jonny was when we did have that 45-minute conversation, just talking about everything, it just felt really natural. There was two things about it, and I don't want to get choked up about it, but it was just like when he told me that he had been working for the company for 8 or 9 years and had started with box office and done so many things up to it, you know, it made me feel so good that I could hire him because he was within the company. Because I could have hired inside, outside. It didn't matter. Carl didn't care. But for me to take someone, give them a full-time position and put him where he should be, which is a national position as a manager and what he does, because it's incredible. And I will say that the one thing that Carl, my boss, said was, he has a stellar reputation that every time people talk about Jonny. So people were talking about Jonny before I even mentioned Johnny's name. So that's a wonderful thing that all of his GMs and all the people that work with him was saying, like, there's a real rock star out here that can do all this kind of stuff. I think about this job. I've only had it for 7 months. And like he said, he started working with me the minute that I said I was going to hire him, because it took a minute, even though he was working for Live Nation, to get him under my umbrella. And he never said, well, call me in 2 months when I'm when I get my first paycheck. That's what's so wonderful about Jonny, was he trusted me. He trusted to know that, you know, you are going to work with me. It's going to be us, you know, and this is so neat that this is our first time in 6 months that we've even ever been in the same room together.
Right.
Even though we talk to each other 5, 7, 8 times a day, constantly, and we're all constantly on every Zoom call together. So, I mean, we felt comfortable. And even when you brought him yesterday here, we automatically, there's a comfort. It feels like we've known each other forever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the wonderful thing about this. Was I was a little nervous about having a division of my own, but then once I had us together, and I say we're a team because we are a team, and everyone knows that, it's pretty amazing because we work for a big company. And I just feel like, wow, out of the hundreds of people that I could have met, it's unbelievable that we met each other.
If y'all could go into more detail about what third-party programming is for people who may not know, and just talk about that, and then talk about how y'all's roles differ and how you help each other.
It is interesting because when you do say third party, a lot of people don't know what that is. Live Nation is the largest concert company in the world. Live Nation presents. So a lot of people know who Live Nation is or Ticketmaster is. We have talent buyers at Live Nation that book all the talent, book all the shows, Billie Eilish to whoever, Drake, just any concert that you see. And then, of course, they do the smaller clubs and theaters as well, and the big shows. But what Jonny and I do, we work with outside promoters that have nothing to do with Live Nation. A lot of them are Latin promoters, K-pop,
cool.
you know, a lot of international things, you know, reggae, all kinds of stuff. And not just that. Sometimes it can be rap. Sometimes it can be, you know, children. It can be the Nutcracker. It can be all kinds of programming. So that's why they say third-party programming, is because they will contact us. We don't contact them. And they'll say, hey, I'm interested in doing a show at Riverside where he works, or Coca-Cola Roxy where I work. And we have to negotiate the rental deal plus the production. And then we're the ones to make sure that the tickets go on sale. And like we were talking about, you know, the marketing strategies. So between us separately in 2019, he did about $1 million in his world. I did about $1 million in my world. And so we're the perfect match, right? He's West Coast, I'm Southeast. And so with that being said, now that we both do this together, he has Texas and California, and then I definitely do Georgia. And then we just kind of split what we're doing. Sometimes if it's anything to do with California, and California's big, and so is Texas, so he has a lot of responsibility with all those cities and all those venues. But if we do something in between, or if we have a K-pop show that I worked with, because there's a company that I worked with a couple years ago that did really well, we're combining forces and working on that together. So we pretty much do anything that's across the country, we work together on. That's why Jonny's here, is because on Sunday we have a sold-out show at the Warner Theater in D.C., and then we go to Miami for another sold-out show. That's why I'm saying we join forces, because we want to introduce both of us to those promoters, you know, showing them that it's a team effort. We're curating these venues for the right outside promoter. We don't let just any outside promoter come in just because they have a little bit of money and maybe have a show to do. Because if they're not qualified or professional, they don't need to be coming into a nice club or theater and ruining our reputation, because as we know, patrons don't know who is presenting the show.
Right.
They just know they want to see a show at whatever venue. And so we're kind of the gatekeepers when it comes to outside promoters. We've been telling all the GMs and the buyers and the presidents, we know how much responsibility we have on this, and we take it very, very seriously. And that's what I really appreciate with Jonny, is that he's a serious person and he's a respectable person, and he doesn't want to put in something that we shouldn't be putting in, and vice versa.
So what are the qualifications? You mentioned you won't just book any or you won't just answer any promoter. What are the qualifications that you look for that will make you decide this is a show that we'll accept to put on, or we want to do?
I guess it's a few things. One is obviously the artist. There's going to be certain artists that we can and can't do. Those artists also have to fit the room. Another thing for the promoter, it depends also on how experienced they are. We get hit up by a lot of different people that sometimes they just have money and they want to try and throw a show. We want to make sure we put good things into these rooms that are going to make, the promoter money, the venue money, and it's just a good night. So we want professional people coming to the room that are doing this for the right reason, not just to hang out with their friends or because they have the money. We want them to bring in good acts. So one thing is the artist, like Velena said, we're trying to curate it towards the venue. The second thing, too, is the promoter is professional and they have history of doing shows and this isn't their first rodeo. And I guess another important thing, too, is just that as long as they have history, and we can always check that history, too, especially if they've been in Live Nation venues, is that they can pay their bill. We don't want them to, throw a show and they can't pay out the artists and they can't pay out us. So we just are trying to be careful when it comes to renting out the venue. Like I said, the promoter being professional and well-seasoned is a huge thing. So I guess that would be my answer to that question, is just, well-rounded promoters, the artists, the money, past history. We're just checking out those things. Of course, we're trying to get their ticketing information and get it up on sale in an appropriate amount of time. And then we also talk to them about their marketing plan and what we can do to assist them. Of course, when they're renting out the venue, it's their responsibility to market it, and they're responsible for the success of the show. But we also want to help them as much as we can with the success. So we give advice, we suggest things. If we're going to do anything on our end, we will. For example, in Riverside, I have a relationship with the radio station, so I'll connect them with the radio marketing managers or whoever from the radio station to give them the boost that they need. And in doing it nationally, I might ask the buyer or the general manager on what we can do to help, because they're going to know that market better than I am. So we always want to help the promoter in any way we can on the success of their event once it goes up and we have our deposit. But it just looks really good on both ends when the show's a success. The venue makes money, they make money, the artist is happy with a filled up room, and they want to come back. And so at the same time, we're cultivating a relationship with those promoters. That'll help their rep when they go into other rooms. And so then once they have a good rep with us, doing maybe 1 or 2 rooms, and we can prove that they do really well, then they can start doing more rooms with Live Nation. Or even if they go into a different room, I get asked a lot by different venues and different companies on how the show did with Live Nation. And of course, I'm always honest. If it's a good show, it's a good show. If it's not, it's not. But we have to be honest.
Yeah, numbers don't.
Yeah, numbers don't lie. But I guess to circle back to your question, the 3 things again is the promoter is well seasoned, the artist fits the venue, and they have the money to pay for that room and that artist.
I remember y'all mentioning politics and how y'all deal with like a really high volume, and how Jonny's based out of California. Velena, you're out of the Southeast. How do you think it's helps y'all that you guys are on 2 different sides of the United States? And do you think that's helped with understanding the politics in each state that you're working in? And how do you think that's helped and affected y'all's work ethic and how you work together?
I think it's helped quite a bit, because Jonny just knows so many of the GMs and operations managers and even box office and marketing out west, right? And then I know a few on this side, so we could both touch base with each other and go, do you know this person? Do you know this person? Or sometimes, he'll email somebody and they don't get back to him, and he goes, do you mind just checking back in with this person and seeing what we can do with this? And so with working with 2 people, it's kind of a double whammy. Instead of one of us just being by ourselves, kind of out in the dark, we've got this force. I know now, because he's here and he's going to be here with me for 10 days and we're going to be traveling. We want to see a lot of venues that we have never been to, and we want to meet some of these people that we've been working with for the last 6 months. But I definitely see this next year, we'll definitely see each other more because it is just only two of us working this whole country that we'll definitely do more together. I do think it's an asset that he's West Coast and I'm East Coast for sure.
Right. I'd love to talk more about where y'all will be traveling, where you're going, which specific venues you're going to, what sold out shows, all that kind of stuff, if you'd like to go into that.
Yeah, so what we thought is we've got a K-pop promoter who I had my largest CM with in 2019 in Atlanta, and she's just a joy to work with. She's just super cool, and she's just a tastemaker when it comes to K-pop. When she came to us talking about doing a show with this particular artist, even our box office people and GMs, when they went on sale and they sold out within an hour, were writing to us, congratulations, because no one knows kind of that genre, right? I mean, some do. Like my real good friend, her daughter, when I said I had that, she almost started crying because it's not in Atlanta. And she's just like, oh, please bring them to Atlanta. It's one of my favorite bands, right? So that's what's so exciting. So when we did sell out so quickly, and it is such a good company to work with, I just asked Jonny, hey, wouldn't that be great if you could meet me in Atlanta? And then let's pick two venues that we would like to see first, and then two that we could travel to. And so we just picked DC and Miami. This is something that's going to help us in the long run, because the Warner Theater in DC is very prestigious and has a lot of rentals. Johnny's had a relationship with the GM, and I would like to meet her. And then it's so funny, the production manager, the sound department, used to be the tour manager for 15 years for Drive By Truckers.
What?
So I've known him for so long.
Oh, wow.
So I get to say hi to him, and then we've met new people along the way. And so I just think that we're going to go a long way once we show that not only are we booking these things, but we do want to be there, and we are prideful of these shows, and we want to show that promoter that congratulations. We want to see it. I want to see the 2,500 people screaming as loud as they can. It's a team effort for sure.
Right.
Just think in the music industry, everyone thinks it starts when the band gets there. There is so much to it. Oh, yeah. There are so many weeks and months and contracts and everything you can't even imagine before they actually get to that venue. And that's why when people go, oh, I want to be a talent buyer, or, oh, I want to be in the music industry, it's not a 9-to-5 job. You know what I mean? You just don't clock out at 5 and then you're done. You could have 12-hour days, you could have 14-hour days. It just depends, but especially in the beginning.
Gypsy snoring, guys.
Yeah, that's not me snoring. That's not Johnny snoring. But that's the whole thing is that you just got to be so on top of it. It's great that people are music lovers, and that's wonderful. We all are, and we all should be if we want to get in the music industry. But there's a lot more organization and just, being one step ahead and kind of thinking about this and having lists and just figuring everything out, because we are on the business side, right?
Right.
So it is a business. A good segue just for anyone that's listening that's young and coming up, I do believe that you don't necessarily have to be in Los Angeles or New York or Nashville, that there are plenty of opportunities. There's so many cities, not even Live Nation that we're talking about. There's just so many music venues in secondary markets, Birmingham and Charlotte and, Madison, Wisconsin, Salt Lake City, Memphis, Tennessee. That's why I just don't want people like, oh, I didn't get a job, because when he was just saying it took 2 months for Riverside to call him back, it sometimes takes a minute. Like Johnny was saying too, is that he did a couple of jobs at the House of Blues. He did box office and then a busser. Right. And when I started, I didn't start as a talent buyer. I started as answering the phones in hospitality. Even my boss, who's high up at Live Nation, he parked cars at an amphitheater under the umbrella of Live Nation. So he's been with Live Nation for many, many years too. And I just love the stories of people saying they worked in the mailroom at William Morris, or they did this. Everyone has to start somewhere. So don't be discouraged, but just get in, because once you get in and once they see you, like how they saw Johnny and they just kept moving him up, everybody at any company wants to hire within. That's what you want to do. You don't want to have to go outside, because the people that are working there already know the system and kind of the politics. So that's the point. If you love a company, a booking agent, a management company, just get in any way you can and just say yes. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I will learn how to do this. Even if you don't know it, you will learn. And just like Johnny was saying, there was a couple years that it was rough. But instead of just getting upset and feeling discouraged and quitting because he doesn't think he's good enough, he's just like, I'm going to learn this. He was tough, and you got to be tough. Show business is not for everyone, or everybody would be in our industry. And you just have to realize it's not easy, and no one's going to give you huge breaks if you don't deserve it.
So would it be helpful if, let's say, you want to work in Los Angeles or Nashville, to already be in that city when applying for the job? Because do you think you'd be passed up by somebody else who's already working or living in that city? Do you think it matters?
I do think that they pick people that live there, because if you're talking about, like, if you're going to be a marketer or even a junior buyer or any of that, they want you to know your town.
Right, of course.
So if you don't live there, how are you going to know where, even if you were putting up posters, you wouldn't even know where to put up posters, or even like the local scene, right? So I do think it's important. It's not necessary, because people right now, after the COVID thing, and people did leave the music industry because they got furloughed for a very long time, and so maybe they had to go into another industry. Maybe they went back to school. So I do think there's more opportunities to go everywhere, because they're just starving for people to work. That's why I tell any of the graduates, there are jobs right now. Starting in the box office, that is like a coveted spot, because then you learn that part of it, which is so important. The ticketing is the most important thing in our industry, basically. So if you do that for 1 or 2 years, man, that will set you up for so much else, in our industry. It's all about your name and getting your name out there. And so if you're just dabbling in different little things, it's like you will always have a job.
Right.
So if one goes away, it's going to be fine if you have a stellar reputation.
A good follow-up question to what you've been talking about. What do you think are good characteristics of somebody who wants to work within this industry? Like, I remember you talking about having a really good work ethic, not being discouraged when you get yelled at or something doesn't go your way, to continue to not quit. Like, how do you keep yourself moving forward in doing that? And what are other good characteristics to have in order to be successful in this industry?
The most important, I think, two actually. One is honesty. And to go hand in hand with that, it was transparency. Like, if something happens, you have to be honest. If you messed up, if something happens, somebody else messed up, you have to communicate that with the managers, whoever's world it hits. Because if you're going to hide something, it's just going to blow up in your face. If you're transparent and you're honest about what happened, and you tell whoever it is, or multiple people, I'm so sorry, I messed up. This is what happened. And also come up with a solution. This is how we can fix it. That'll get you a lot of places, because if you're dishonest and you're hiding things and you're not being completely transparent with the folks you work around, then I think that will breed contempt, and people are not going to want to work with you anymore. I think being kind is another one too, because if you're working with a lot of people and you rough up some feathers and you act out, it's going to make your job harder, and people are not going to work with you. You have to have thick skin for sure to be in the industry, but that doesn't dish what you get. So if people are rude and mean to you, that doesn't mean because you have thick skin, you're rude and mean back. It's just better to be calm and just be nice with whatever happens, and just figure out whatever you need to figure out. Come up with solutions. And know your job. Yeah, definitely know your job.
Know your job.
I know I mentioned that I was given a lot of chances when I first started, and that was probably just a very rare occasion where that happens. But I did start from the bottom up, and sometimes you get people that are just thrown into it, or are just they know something and they get the job. But it's very important. Velena's absolutely right to know how to do your job.
Like, you just got your job, and so we have this thing called Rome that we're supposed to know. That's kind of the mecca. It's the brain for operations. I mean, everybody looks at this, so that's the template. They're not going to ask you the deal. They look at Rome and they see what you're supposed to do. And the point is, not everybody's going to know it in the beginning, but if this is something like we're talking about, learn it, figure it out. Or Excel or any of this stuff. It's really important, because they're not expecting you in the beginning to be experts, but once they tell you what your responsibilities are, then do your best at knowing that, because that's why you're there in the first place.
What made you want to work at Live Nation? What was it that you saw in the company?
That's a good question. The way I got my Live Nation internship, it was just by chance. The internship just kind of fell into my lap. When I was in college, my neighbor's friend's daughter was a talent buyer for Live Nation. It just so happened that my mom was talking to my neighbor, and my neighbor mentioned it to her daughter, and her daughter mentioned it to her friend, and she was like, well, we need some help. Why don't you tell him to come do an interview with me? So I did the interview, and they just gave it to me. And my heart wasn't set on that internship. I really actually wanted to be in a recording studio and learn how to do sound. But working with folks that are at the top of their game, being presidents, huge talent buyers, with just so much knowledge, and just watching them work, they still had fun up in the office, which you would think at a headquarter, It'd just be really serious and quiet there. But they were joking and laughing. I used to go have lunch with presidents. One of the Latin touring guys we work with all the time, him and I used to have lunch, and he's such a nice guy, and he's a very smart man. And now I get to work with him, like, not on an equal level, but at, a similar level. So it's crazy going from an intern all the way to being here, where I'm talking to, my old general manager is now a VP. And he called me for advice, and he's called me to talk about how he can help me and what we need to do to reach a similar goal. And watching the folks at Live Nation and just how smart they were and just how they grew, hearing their stories of getting to where they're at now, I just knew I wanted to be there at some point. And I don't know how I would get there. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be smart to the point where I got there. And I knew the business. And I can't say I'm there yet, but I'm getting there. And I hope one day I can be a VP and, be at that level.
But you will. And I would say about Live Nation or any of these big companies is there is places to grow. Where there's smaller places, it's very hard to grow. So as much as they would love to have you grow, there's just no spots. Well, in Live Nation, it's global. Who knows for Jonny in 3 years where he could be. They might tell him, like, listen, we need you in Australia. We need you to do the same thing that you've been doing in America. Now you needed to do it abroad. Who knows, right? That's the possibility that he has. When people are listening to this, that's what they should be thinking about when they are going working at companies. Can they grow? Are they going to be stuck just in as assistants? Because remember, in our Women Who Rock, I don't want y'all just to be assistants. I want y'all to move on to be real salary positions. You have to start as an assistant. I had to too. So did he. But you don't have to stay there.
Another follow-up question to that is, you've talked about all the people that you work with. I'm thinking specifically of promoters. Could you guys tell me who are your favorite people that you've worked with within the company and their roles? And just go into that. Talk about that. You're smiling, so I'm really excited to hear this answer.
Oh my God, I've worked with so many good people. When I first became assistant, it was new, and it was hard. The reason I think I stuck around with it, I don't think I ever had the thought of quitting, but I did have really good mentors. My first example of somebody that I worked with would be my general manager. And if he ever listens to this, Amir, thank you for everything. He's the one that gave me the opportunity, and I was box office for almost 4 years. And, I probably had the thought of, I feel kind of stuck, but I like Velena said, I didn't give up. I stayed because I knew I wanted to be in the industry. And so the general manager saw that. He's actually told me that when I had my interview with him. He gave me the opportunity to try and book shows, and he gave me a lot of leash. He didn't micromanage me, which I do appreciate. He gave me a lot of assistance when I needed it. I asked a lot of questions, and he was never super harsh with me. He was firm, and he was fair, which I think was a really good quality he had. And he was always good to me until he left because he got a better opportunity. And that was a really sad day when he left. He was such a great general manager. When he left, we had my other general manager, Sean. And also, Sean, if you're listening to this, thank you as well. He is now a VP for Live Nation.
Oh, wow.
He was a very firm man. He definitely knew what he wanted, and he wanted to execute it a certain way. He was a very well-seasoned man. I was 3 years in, so I knew a good amount, but I didn't know everything. So I had to learn my organizational skills, and I'm still learning, but some things fell through the cracks, and he would be like, how did this happen? Why? It was a rough conversation we used to have, but I was transparent. I told him exactly what happened. When things fell through the cracks and I messed up something, I would tell him. I was very honest with him, and he was honest with me. We would have long conversations on certain nights after shows. We would sit in the office for an hour or two, and he would give me a lot of information on how he thought things should run. And he would actually try to help me with my career too. He actually did try to get me a job with rentals years ago. And I think that's probably how my reputation kind of like came about, because he said really nice things and did try to get me a job. After he left, we had a different general manager. She wasn't a mentor to me, but she gave me a lot of leash. That's when I really took reins on everything. I was responsible for the rental budget, for the co-pros and fillers, and I did a lot. She just kind of let me do whatever I wanted to do, which was also a good experience, because then I kind of was able to be creative on certain events, and there was a lot of trust. So I didn't really have anybody telling me what to do. I just did it. And that had its own set of fulfillment, because I just felt responsible for it. Like, I did hit my budget, and I did everything I needed to do. So at that point in my life, with the general managers trusting me, and then even my buyer, who is still my buyer today, he mentored me too in Rome. He would tell me a little bit about talent. I knew him from when I was working as a ticket seller at House of Blues. So I've known him for almost 10 years, which is crazy to think about. but he is a very calculated man. And so everything I would build in Rome that was kind of on the more promoted side, he would check it and he would watch my numbers and he would ask me about how it's going. But he was patient with me too, because he has a lot of venues. He was always straight up with me. Even if it was harsh, he would definitely give me the whole truth. Of course, it might not be the thing I want to hear, but it was definitely the thing I needed to hear. On whether what I want to do is it's not going to work. But sometimes he'd still let me do it. And he would let me try it out. Again, another blessing of being in Riverside is there was a lot of room to grow and a lot of forgiveness in that market. And there was a lot of communication. Everybody was really honest with each other. All the managers were very honest. So that was really helpful. And that's why I say it's a really good quality and an important quality to have being in this business. To circle back to the question, Amir, Sean, my talent buyer, were probably the biggest influences in my life as far as like mentorship. Until now, Velena has given me the biggest opportunity. Until now, yeah. This has been a humongous opportunity. It feels like a huge jump, to be honest. To go from, 2 venues to essentially, not all of them, but a lot of them. It's something I didn't ever think I would do on the national side of things. I definitely for sure wanted to do something, in California. But I did not think I'd be touching this many venues and talk to this many people within the company and outside. So thank you to Amir and Sean, all the buyers and everybody I've talked to that have helped me along the way. And it's gotten me to this point that I'm at now. And of course, it's still a long road ahead. But, I'm here now and I'm just really, really grateful to be here.
And then I have a slightly different question for you, Velena. If you could tell me what it's been like having been a mentor for so many different people throughout your career.
I started hiring interns for the 40 Watt. I've had hundreds of interns now over my 31-year career, but I hope wherever they've been, and all of them are all over the place right now, they're either in our industry or was in our industry. My goal has been for the last at least 10 years, is I like looking at a map of the United States and seeing where all my people are, because they truly are all over. And I've got, booking agents, management companies, everywhere. And it just makes me, proud, but also I can just call them and go, hey, when is Parquet Courts playing? When are they routed? Because they're all working at these, major booking agents now. Just like it's really been interesting to see all my friends do very well, and that's what I want, because I want our industry to stay strong. And I feel like if I can kind of raise these people to be really good employees, loving what they do, but just like you were saying about being fair and honest. So I want our industry to be strong, and I want it to be fair.
I know whoever you hire, whoever you put forward, that they'll carry forward what you've taught me. And I've loved this opportunity, and I just wanted to thank you for everything, because you're probably like the coolest person I think I could have ever worked for. And I don't think I've ever told you, so I just want you to know that. Really it's so cool to watch you, because I feel like you carry yourself in such a professional, cool way, and I just would love to be that,
Well, you will be. You will be. Because you will be, because I want you to be, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm ordaining you to do that and go out in life. And that's the thing, is some of the people that have worked for me end up not staying in our industry because it is hard and it is grueling, right? And they do it for 5 years, and then they'll call me and say, hey, man, I'm going to do something else. And I have no problem with that, because I feel like the life lessons that we all learn from each other, because I learn all the time as well, is that just being good people. And so whatever you're doing in whatever business you're in, I just want you to be a strong, positive, independent thinker, and just being the best out here, because we only have one life. You don't get a second chance. I love hearing about other people doing other things, because I find it interesting. I'm not going to blow you off just because you're not in our industry. But I do love hearing when they leave me or leave Athens, like, what are you doing and what have you learned? Because then you can come back to the people here and kind of tell us, the good and the bad about what's going on.
I'll stop the questions now, because I've asked a million, and you guys were so great, and I'm just so thankful that you would want to be on here and do this with me, and just it was so cool to learn more in depth about what y'all do, and I hope everybody else can learn something from this. We've talked about so much and said so many helpful things that will help people who are like me, just about to enter this workforce, and what to do, what not to do going forward. So and you guys are just awesome people in general, so I'm glad everybody gets to hear about you.
I would just say apply. Just keep applying for all kinds of things, and don't get discouraged, and have your little side hustle jobs, and just kind of wait. And then once you get it, that's why I say just learn it. Write down what you're supposed to know and just go, I'm going to figure this out, or I will get someone to help me.
Thank you guys so much. I'm going to mention Gypsy, because you could hear her in the background, and I wish she could say something too, but she's fast asleep.
Well, thank you.
And stay tuned for next week's episode where I interview Sarah Moots, a musician here in Athens, Georgia. We talk about her career, her first album coming out, and her new single called Something, as well as her plans for the future and a lot of really cool stuff. So